This is R-Type, the first game to run on IRAM's 16-bit M72 arcade system. R-Type is a horizontally scrolling shoot-up arcade video game developed and released by IRAM in 1987, and the first game in the R-Type series. The player controls a starship, the R9 Arrowhead, in its efforts to destroy the Bido, a powerful alien race hell-bent on wiping out all of mankind. The R9 can acquire a glowing orbicular device called a Force, protecting it from enemy fire and providing additional firepower. The backstory, such as it is fairly minimal. Humanity banishes a hideous bioweapon known as the Bido into a phantom zone, which then goes back in time and attacks humanity several hundred years earlier. The R-Type series of fighters are developed as quickly as possible to fight back the threat, using the Force device, a piece of organic technology which uses a contained larval Bido to produce an indestructible but not impenetrable energy field. At the time, R-Type looked like something sent back from the future, coming with its own innovative power-up mechanic, a constantly evolving pod or force, which could be attached to the front or back of your craft. It provided a slowly unfolding tour of a hypnotically alien, palpably dangerous landscape. The game became famous for its trio of astonishing area bosses, a screen-filling H.R. Giger-inspired monstrosity called Dobkeratops, a hideous, pulsating giant heart called Commander, and a kilometre-long warship which took up the entirety of Level 3. In the 1980s, horizontally scrolling shooters were everywhere in the arcades and at home. It was a genre that was saturating the market. If you take a look back at the games of the early 80s on the home micros, they were everywhere, usually some kind of different interpretation of Defender or Scramble. IRAM had set out to design a game that would be different to all those games that had gone before, and not just in appearance, but in playability as well. From a gameplay standpoint, the R-Type series is notable for requiring significantly more memorization of its maps than many of its competitors. The game also expanded upon the idea of a system of power-ups, each of which did something different. Prior to this implementation, pickups were either point bonuses or they all did the same thing, as with the currency-like system of Gradius. The first power-up you collect automatically equips the Force. The Force initially fires a pulse beam when attached, but it can be upgraded by collecting another weapon upgrade to provide one of 3 different powerful weapons. It can be upgraded another time by collecting another weapon upgrade, which further empowers its weapon. When detached, the Force instead fires a secondary set of guns concurrently with the R9's main gun, even if the Force is at a distance from the spacecraft. The Force fires simultaneously with the main gun or the wave cannon. The Force has a secondary use as a shield, It is completely indestructible and can block most things fired at it, as well as damage or destroy enemies on contact. From a graphical point of view, the visuals were very striking. The detail on each of the enemy sprites was fantastic, and the end of level bosses, some of which were huge, were a real visual treat for the eyes. The opening level has so many images that have become iconic in video gaming history. This circle of enemy craft you have to enter, these two arms that look like they could close down on you at any second, this red and blue laser blast, and then the end of level boss, Dobkeratops. Possibly one of the most iconic video game bosses ever, period. And all of this was in the very first level. It certainly did set the tone for what was to come. Sonically, the game is excellent, with excellent music for each stage, and the boss music is again another iconic feature of this game. The explosion sound effects, as well as the laser blast sound effects, are all excellent, and the game contained no digitised or synthesised speech, a feature that was starting to crop up more and more in games. When a game sounds this good, don't ruin it with speech overs. The game was renowned for its supremely challenging difficulty setting, which only got tougher on each level, and then when you think you've completed a game, you have to do it all over again. It takes 2 playthroughs to truly beat the game. R-Type had a lot of original features back then, like the power-up system and the huge end of level bosses. Other game designers took notice, and before you knew it, all horizontally scrolling shooters had a power-up system and huge end of level bosses. But unlike other games, R-Type has stood the test of time. Retro gamers will be able to mention lots of horizontally scrolling shooters of the time. Invariably, they will all mention R-Type as a true great, which it is, of course. Due to the popularity of it in the arcades, it was inevitable it would get ported over to numerous home formats. And of course, it was a game that was high on my wish list. Sega got an official port of this amazing game in the same year it was released in the arcades, 1988. And when I finally got a Sega Master System in Easter 1989, R-Type was one of the games that came with it. The conversion of R-Type to the Sega Master System was handled by Compile, and what a job they done. R-Type on the Master System is an absolutely amazing game. It wasn't a perfect recreation of the arcade game, but it was as close as any home system would get. But you would expect that from a 4 megabit cartridge. which was a huge amount of memory for a home console at that time. Sprites in the Master System version are smaller than their arcade counterparts, and are smaller too relative to the scenery. And when too many are on screen, you get a fair amount of flickering and slowdown, which is less apparent in its original form. Nevertheless, virtually all the enemy patterns are retained, although the numbers are decreased in high volume areas for performance reasons. The level layouts are sometimes artificially lengthened or shortened to try and manage this workload further, while balancing the differing sizes of the graphics. All of the levels were included, and all of the level bosses, albeit without any kind of background to be found. The level of difficulty in the Master System was closely matched to its arcade counterpart. I would spend hours in this game memorising the attack patterns in the hope of progression. The Master System port of R-Type is considered to be one of the best ports of the game ever, and rightly so. It scored very highly in almost every video games publication of the time, and for me, it was one of those games that really showed it was time to upgrade from the Commodore 64. R-Type is a game I like to play still to this day. So the question is, which one do I play? Well, for me, it's a no-brainer. I play the arcade version. Yes, the Master System is excellent, and one of the best games to ever grace that system. But the arcade was a more polished game, no sprite flicker or slowdown to ruin the experience, and the sound was some of the best ever heard in a game of this type in the 80s. R-Type was commercially successful and celebrated by critics for its graphics and addictive gameplay. Although it would receive criticism for its high difficulty level, it is commonly cited as one of the best shoot-'em-up video games, as well as one of the greatest video games of all time, and it is a game that I can't recommend highly enough. That's all from me, folks. If you like this video, then please feel free to like, comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching.